BLUELOCK second season releasing very soon, many fans like myself are very excited for what's to come. My manga readers, come on, we know what's coming up. Shido bust. But what exactly do we know about this second season? And what will this information mean for the adaptation come October? Well, in today's video, we're going to be going over the confirmed information that we do have on this second season, as well as my own predictions on how the pacing for this next season will play out. Now, before we begin, I do want to leave a spoiler warning for the upcoming season of BLUELOCK, because I'll be discussing events of this next season in this video. So if you wish to not be spoiled, I would suggest clicking off this video. Now, the first thing that we need to address is the animation, because that was a very hot topic when the first season of the anime came out. Like the first season, the second season will be produced by 8-Bit Studios. However, it's unconfirmed whether or not director Tetsuaki Watanabe will be returning for this follow-up. We could potentially see a return, or we may see director Shinsuke Ichikawa come to direct some, if not all of the episodes, as Ichikawa directed the episode Nage movie. There is one thing we need to address though. Will the animation still be dog shit? And if I'm being honest, it's kind of 50-50. One of the biggest complaints in the first season was the choice of using CGI characters in some specific shots. However, in my opinion, I didn't even notice it until my second watch through. And even then, it didn't really bother me that much, considering how short those cuts were where CGI was being used. That, and I'm just happy for anything we get. As long as it isn't Berserk level, we're fine. However, what you need to consider is, why was CGI used more often in the second core, and why did the animation quality drop so much? Now, this is only fan speculation, but the reason for that is actually because of the World Cup. We all remember that phase on TikTok in December of 2022 where BLUELOCK and the World Cup edits were popping up like crazy. It's actually because of those edits that the animation quality dropped so much. Well, kinda. According to some sources, the directors at 8-Bit were very pushy towards releasing the second core of BLUELOCK as soon as possible, simply because of how popular it was when the World Cup occurred, and they simply wanted to maintain its hype and viewership. Not to mention, BLUELOCK was actually the #1 most sold manga in 2023, but now they're not actually rushing to produce this season because of the World Cup, so I'm honestly very excited for some specific shots we're going to be seeing in this upcoming season. I do want to warn, however, I don't think the CGI is going to go away. Shots like these with Isagi monologuing, it'll probably use CGI for this specific shot. And I get it, you want crisp, clean animation. But hey, even One Piece gets sloppy sometimes with their animation, but when it picks up, it picks up. But I can say for certainty they're going to be putting a lot of budget into the Lean vs. Sai matchup. Can't confirm, but it's very likely. Now, BLUELOCK's animation isn't the only thing to cover when discussing the anime. We also need to talk about the voice acting. And you'll be happy to know that all of the original cast from Season 1 are returning to renew their role for Season 2. This also includes Takahiro Sakurai returning as Hitoshi Sai, as he only had one line in Season 1? However, recently we have been given some extra details regarding voice actors leading into Season 2. To start, I think we all know that the voice actor for Shido is Yuichi Nakamura, who also voices Gojo in Jujutsu Kaisen, which means yes, Gojo and Geto are canon. There's also some other voice actors that fans may not remember or recognize because they had very limited roles or just didn't talk at all. We have Makoto Furukawa playing Karasu Tabito, who also voices Benimaru in Reincarnated as a Slime. We have Kengo Kawanishi voicing Eita Otoya, who also plays Gen in Dr. Stone. We have Takuya Eguchi, who plays Kenyu Yukimiya, who also voices Twilight in Spy X Family. And recently announced, we have Chiaki Kobayashi playing Corona Ranze, who also voices Mash from Mashle Magic and Muscles. Why they gave Corona a voice actor even when he doesn't have any lines until the NEL, I wouldn't know, but I'm glad to get him anyways. We have Satoshi Hino playing Oliver Aiku, who also voices Daichi from Haikyuu and Rengoku from Demon Slayer. And the last of the newly revealed is Akahisa Wakayama, who will voice Shuta Sendo, and also voices Kanzaki from Classroom of the Elite. But with the voice actors being announced, let's take a look at the episode pacing and distribution that this second season might follow, as it was recently announced that BLUELOCK will begin streaming on October 5th and will have 14 episodes in the second season, which may seem quite short, but when you look at it, it's actually pretty average. Season 1 ranged over 24 episodes, and while it was a little rushed, it covered over 90 chapters in its entirety, excluding about 2 half chapters. And when you look at what the second season will cover, Season 2 only covers about half of that, with there being around 50 chapters in the third selection and U20 match. With that, it's reasonable to conclude that BLUELOCK's second season will not be split into 2 cores like most anime are, and it will instead run its entire season in full from start to finish. I do believe that it's possible that they'll do around 1 to 2 week break in between the third selection and the U20 match, but it isn't necessarily needed. Now, Season 1 ended on Chapter 94, and by my guesses, will most likely end on Chapter 149 with the Kaiser teaser and Kunigami wildcard reveal. Meaning Season 2 would cover around 4 chapters per episode if they want to keep it on track. Given that, here are my predictions on how each episode is going to be paced. Episode 1 of Season 2 would begin where the first season ended off, and would get into the explanation of the third selection by Ego. It'd continue into the following chapter where Team Z has their dinner reunion, and during that reunion, Ego would explain why Kunigami didn't survive, and we would get the flashback of the Kunigami and Reo vs Shido match. The episode would probably end on chapter 96, where Ego says to the top 6 players in Blue Lock that they should think of themselves as the challengers. Meaning episode 1 would cover all of 95, almost all of 96, and the rest of chapter 88 and 89 that was skipped over from the first season. Episode 2 would begin with Isagi's talk with Reo where they decide their teams, followed by all of 97 where we meet Nanase and Hiyori, and then all of 98 where we see both Shido and Karasu score a goal. Meaning episode 2 would cover the rest of 96, all of 97, and all of 98. Episode 3 would begin where episode 2 ended and continue with Otoya and Rin's goal in chapter 99, followed by Chiguri's assist and Rin and Shido's collision in chapter 100. The episode would continue with Shido's rotating drive shot and would end with Isagi stealing the ball from Karasu and Rin in chapter 101, meaning episode 3 would cover all of chapters 99, 100, and 101. Episode 4 would pick up with Isagi stealing the ball, along with his failed scoring attempt, which was completed by Rin. We would end up having the conversation between Hiyori and Isagi about reflexivity in chapter 102, along with Isagi using Metavision to score a goal in chapter 103. The episode would then continue in chapter 104 with us seeing Team C versus Team A, and would finish in chapter 105 with Yukimiya and Nagi's chemical reaction, meaning episode 4 would cover chapters 102, 103, 104, and 105. Episode 5 would pick up in chapter 106 with Reo's chameleon style being revealed, and would continue in chapter 107 by showing Team C's defeat. We get to see Itoshi-Sai request a striker from Blue Lock, along with us seeing the completion of the final match of Team A versus Team C, with Ego announcing that he'd now decide the Blue Lock 11. The episode would then end with Ego dedicating the Blue Lock 11 in chapter 108, meaning episode 5 would cover chapters 106, 107, and 108. Episode 6 would include Itoshi-Sai selecting Shido to play for him in chapter 109. We would see the U20 team in chapter 110, and we would get Ego's explanation on flow in chapter 111. We'd also get to see the interaction between Sai and Aiku. Episode 6 would end with the start of the U20 match, with it ending on the kickoff for the Blue Lock 11 in chapter 112, meaning episode 6 would cover chapters 109, 110, 111, and 112. Episode 7 would begin with Aiku's interception in chapter 113, the Iron Wall Quartet chemical reaction in chapter 114, and Sai's goal in chapter 115. The episode would end with Itoshi Rin getting the ball at the end of chapter 116, where Ego says that Rin's awakening will lead them to victory, meaning episode 7 will cover chapters 113, 114, 115, and 116. Episode 8 would begin with Nagi's tap lift goal in chapter 117, Ego's explanation of ad-libbing in chapter 118, the Itoshi-Sai vs Rin matchup in chapter 119, and in chapter 120, we'd get to see Chiguri's World Roaring Rush. The episode would end with Itoshi Rin's goal, bringing Blue Lock ahead 2-1, meaning episode 8 would consist of chapters 117, 118, 119, and 120. Episode 9 would pick up with Blue Lock defending their lead as the game enters halftime in chapter 121. We'd get the interactions between Bachita's mom and Isagi's parents, as well as the interactions between Sai and the U20 team, with the final scene before the break being the Sent in Shido Ryusei scene in chapter 112. Going into the second half of the episode, we'd see Blue Lock in their locker room, and we would begin the Itoshi brother backstory in chapter 123. The episode would end with Sai returning and confronting Rin in chapter 124, meaning episode 9 will cover chapters 121, 122, 123, and 124. Episode 10 would pick up in chapter 125 with a continuation on the Itoshi brothers backstory, as well as the beginning of the second half. We'd get to see Nico's security area defense on Shido in chapter 126, followed by Shido's Dragon Drive in chapter 127. The episode will end with Reo and Hiyori subbing in for Chiguri and Nico, with the episode specifically ending with Blue Lock kicking off with this new formation in chapter 128. Episode 11 will pick up with Hiyori and Reo doing what they do in chapter 129, followed by Shido's Big Bang Drive in chapter 130. Isagi will ask Ego for a new plan, where he subs in Baro Shoei in chapter 131, with the episode ending as Ego says, "Wreak havoc Baro Shoei" in chapter 132, meaning episode 11 will cover chapters 129, 130, 131, and 132. Going into episode 12, we'll see Aiku enter Flow in chapter 133, followed by his backstory in chapter 134, and Gagamaru's handstand block in chapter 135. We'll also see Itoshi-Sai challenge Isagi in chapter 136, with the episode ending with Baro scoring in chapter 137, meaning episode 12 will cover chapters 133, 134, 135, 136, and 137. Starting episode 13, we have Burū and Isagi's discussion about his goal in chapter 138, followed by Sai beginning to level up his skills in chapter 139. It'll continue with Rin synchronizing his thoughts with Sai in chapter 140 and his block against Shido. It'll continue with BLUELOCK moving up the field in chapter 141 and Bachira entering his flow state and nearly scoring. In chapter 142, we'll see BLUELOCK's desperate defense against the U20 team, where Rin stopping IQ's final shot. This episode will end in chapter 143, where we see Sai's corner kick over to Shido that Rin couldn't predict as Rin enters his flow state. Meaning episode 13 will cover chapters 138, 139, 140, 141, 142, and 143. And the final episode of the season will begin with Rin stealing Hiyori's pass and moving upfield in chapter 144. We'll see him defeat the U20 defenders, followed by him shooting while being pressured by Shido and IQ in chapter 145. Sai will pick up the ball in chapter 146 and dribble downfield before being intercepted by Rin in his flow state at the middle of the episode. Rin and Sai will have their one-on-one in chapter 147, where after beating Sai, Isagi comes in to score the final goal. In chapter 148, we'll have everyone celebrating BLUELOCK's victory, along with Isagi's declaration. The episode will end in chapter 149, with Rin declaring Isagi his rival. We're going to get a small teaser of Kaiser on the phone, followed by the scoreboard for the BLUELOCK vs U20 game. And you may think that's the entire thing. However, in a post-credit scene, we're going to see the wildcard doors open, with Kunigami emerge before cutting to black. And with that, episode 14 covers chapters 144, 145, 146, 147, 148, and 149. And you may believe the distribution of these chapters is very heavy in these last two episodes. However, when you look at it, chapters 146 and 147 could be animated down to like 3 to 5 minutes tops. Especially since these last 12 chapters are very game heavy as opposed to being very monologue-y like the beginning of the game. But that's simply my predictions on how I think this season is going to be paced. It's very likely to change or just not be what I'm predicting at all, but that's my best guess. Now there's one thing I want to cover before season 2 releases, and that is for a possible OVA after this season of BLUELOCK. When looking at the Neo Egoist League, not only is it the most current arc, but is also the longest arc in the series, stretching over 100 chapters, which is almost 3 times as long as the first selection. So if we as fans are wanting more BLUELOCK content, I have a way for 8-bit studios to do that without expending much budget or time. And that, my viewers, is in part to the BLUELOCK Day Off arc. For those who don't know, the BLUELOCK Day Off arc is just a 2-chapter mini arc showing the BLUELOCKers on a day off that they have outside of the project. This 2-chapter mini arc could be adapted into a possible OVA, which would release between season 2 and season 3. Not only is it canon to the main story, it would give us some content while we wait for season 3. It also allow for no waste of an episode during season 3, as the NEL is the longest arc so far, and we'd want as much adapted in season 3 as possible. No need to waste time on a 2-chapter mini arc for 1 episode. In my eyes, a BLUELOCK Day Off OVA would be the perfect way to give us BLUELOCK fans content while giving the studio enough time to produce a very high quality season 3. And potentially the studios could actually animate some of the light novels like Nico's, Rin's, and Kunigami's. And this could release as well prior to season 3. But as of now, that is all of the information that we have currently on BLUELOCK Season 2. If you enjoyed this video, go check out some of my other ones. I'm pretty sure you'd like them too. For the question of the video, what moment from Season 2 are you most excited to see adapted? Mine personally is Chickadee's World Roaring Rush, but leave me yours down in the comment section below. And like always, thank you all for watching, like and subscribe for more content just like this.